Tyler, the Creator.
Why the fuck is Jasper on the swing set again? Fucking Jasper, I told you!
What a guy. If you've been active on the internet for the past 5 years, you've probably seen this man before. And if you haven't, how was the time inside the iceberg? This man is one hell of an entertainer. His multiple series, his Twitter account, and most importantly, his music career. That's not only how he started, but that's pretty much the main reason the buzz surrounding him is so gigantic to this day. But if you clicked in this video, then probably already knew that, so I don't know why I'm telling this. With only 7 albums under his name, Tyler still managed to create one of the most talked about discographies in recent memory. And I, of course, being a mere person that doesn't know if I'm a millennial or a Gen Z, am very familiar with at least one of these projects, right? Right? Don't look at me like that, please. I'll be real here. I used to do something really weird when I was younger, besides eating my boogers. One of that was to get bitter at random artists and refuse to listen to their music. Sometimes it had a reason, for example, the Smiths. I never listened to anything they did because I refused to support Morrissey. But for most cases, U2, Pink Floyd, the Velvet Underground, Sufjan Stevens, it had no real reason. It just happened. And now, I'm slowly but surely catching up to artists I used to do this. I'm constantly jamming Mysterious Ways, I've listened to several Pink Floyd albums, and Velvet Underground and Sufjan Stevens are very eligible for a future episode of this series. But for now, the artist I picked to catch up this time is Tyler. That's it! No more of this BS I got myself into. It's time to get into some Tyler, the Creator. After all, what's the worst that could happen?
One debt to society later.
Now in all seriousness, the discourse surrounding Tyler's discography is so large that I knew what I was going to get going into this. None of the concepts, especially the ones from his early work, caught me off guard. But that doesn't mean they didn't surprise me. I'll get more into detail when I get into the ranking. That's coming... After this brief question I have to everyone watching this. No sponsor, don't worry, I'm still not big enough to do this. I want to make sure if this is a popular opinion or if I have brain damage. But is it just me, or Tyler really sounds like a millionaire?
They see me rolling, they hating.
I mean, it's not just me, right? These two have really similar voices. Please tell me I'm not alone in this, or else I'll drown myself in shame for the next 3 weeks. Anyway, to the ranking.
Took a while and mommy told me Tyler toughen up. Rihanna haircut, somebody took was brown.
Bastard. Tyler's quote-unquote debut album. Yeah, I don't really care for it. I think with this album, Tyler was able to craft a very distinct persona of his own, through his very hostile lyrics, over-the-top presentation, and a shitload of darkness. That from the get-go, he shows that he's not afraid of throwing in your face like a bucket. Another important thing to mention, and this is going to be a thing for most of the upcoming albums, but I think Tyler is an outstanding producer. This is by far the album that his skills are the least developed, logically so it's his debut album, but he's already showing signs of how masterful he's going to be in the future. But this album isn't less for a reason, right? Well, as much as this is technically a really good album, pretty much none of the songs here truly grabbed me. And I feel close to no desire to revisit most of these tracks, outside of maybe Ass Milk and the title track. Plus, not gonna lie, this may not be Tyler's longest album, but by the end of the record, I was exhausted. I specifically mentioned that this record was the one that his skills are the least developed, because the songs of this record, at least to me, suffer from becoming this sort of grey mess of sound after a while. Even the songs that sound-wise stand out in the record, after you finish it, ends up getting blurry in your mind, due to the tiring nature of the beats. I'm sure this would be fixed with multiple listens, but I'll be upfront. This is by far the album in this list that I least have a desire to return. And while I don't think this album is exactly bad overall, I didn't enjoy it nowhere near as much as I was expecting. And therefore, it's in the end of the list. Well, remember what I said about Tyler's production a few minutes ago? Another important thing to mention, and this is going to be a thing for most of the upcoming albums, but I think Tyler is an outstanding producer. And this is going to be a thing for most of the upcoming albums. Most. And this album is the reason why I use this word. To put it shortly, this is how the album sounds.
Come look at the site.
Oh, cool. Can you download the Foo Fighters?
Yeah. Hold on.
I'm only half joking. Subconsciously, I always divide Tyler's discography in 2 trilogies, the unhinged horrorcore one and the lush neo-soul infused one. And in the middle of those, there is Cherry Bomb, occupying this sort of existential limbo, being sort of a bridge between the horrorcore and the neo-soul, and at the same time not sound like either. The sound of this record is very much unique in Tyler's discography, and by that, I mean this is the closest he's ever gotten into sampling Merzbow. Just kidding, it's not that noisy. But by far, this is Tyler's crustiest album. The production seemed to be sort of, I guess, industrial-ish sound that in some tracks work, like Opener Death Camp, but in some cases, it tends to hit some really strange notes. There is still some notable highlights in here, like the aforementioned Death Camp, the title track, Two-Seater, 𝕆𝖵𝖗𝖘𝖏𝖑𝖑, but as a whole album experience, this album tends to be pretty hit or miss. But my general opinion over the LP is that I mildly enjoy it. Have you gotten a bag of popcorn? Maybe some coffee as well? Good, so sit down because we're going to talk about this one for a while. Goblin. Easily one of the most controversial albums of the 21st century. This thing was a ride. If you're watching this, chances are you are already familiar with the topics this album addresses. But in case you don't, this album is notable for extremely hateful lyrics, slurs of all kinds, homophobia, misogyny, it's all here. And sound-wise, this thing's pretty similar to Bastard, just with a more refined production. I was expecting to put this thing in last, but in more ways than one, this album kinda surprised me. As I mentioned, musically it's still pretty similar to Bastard, so I wasn't too keen to it. Even the one track that everyone loves in this record, Yonkers, didn't click with me at all. But what really surprised me is how the narrative of the record flows. This thing pretty much feels like its own audio movie. Dr. TC, a character that was introduced back in Bastard, gets a much bigger spotlight in here. Through it, Tyler managed to express his disturbed psyche in the pacing of an effective thriller movie. And by the end of the record, I was genuinely invested in the story, and wanted to see where each step would follow. Almost like an audio equivalent to American Psycho. I won't spoil too many details in here in case you never listened to this thing, but if you haven't, I seriously recommend you to do so. This thing is a ride concept-wise. I only got really invested in this thing after the second half, which is when the plot thickens. Prior to that, there was just a couple of songs that really engaged me, Radicals and She more specifically. And musically, even the songs at the end rarely impressed me. The only songs of the entire album that I really caught myself returning were She and the instrumental 𝕎𝖈79. The rest, it was worth it to check out, but I don't really feel like returning to it. And one last thing. I know the lyrics for this and Bastard tend to be extremely upsetting. I myself had a hard time digesting most of them, but knowing where Tyler is nowadays, it makes it easier to let go. Knowing he's in a better place mentally now, and that this is just a shadow of his past, even if it's pretty ominous. The final installment of the first trilogy of Tyler's albums is also easily its best. It may not have a super engaging plot like Goblin had, but musically it's leagues better than anything he's done so far. And also is the point where we see Tyler start to change, from his original super ominous persona he had made musically, into something more light, let's say. Light in terms of like Coke going to Diet Coke. It's better for you, but it's still a soda, you know? Here we have Tyler improving everything he's done so far. Lyrics, production, the potency of the beats, and as a result, we get the best songs from this stage of his career. Most notably, Answer, which is becoming one of my favorite Tyler songs. Sadly, it does not excel in some aspects. I believe this record is still in the bloated side of things. I can think of several tracks I don't see a point in being here. I think the album could have ended in 𝕆𝖕𝖗𝖕𝖕, or even Rusty if I were to expand a bit. But at least, it was one heck of a step in the right direction. I can't wait to see what he does next. Wait, he did 4 more albums after this. Right. Anyway. Yes, you know what my top 3 is already. Are you surprised yet? We're now entering what's arguably the most predictable podium in the history of this channel. And the first album to talk in this category is also the most recent album Tyler has released. Call Me If You Get Lost. And now that, yeah, it's part of the Better Tyler trilogy, but it's also easily the weakest link of it. Don't get me wrong, it's good. Really good in fact. Tyler is still in his A game in here, and he puts out some more of his greatest tunes ever in this thing. But I still got a fair share of criticism in here. First of all, even though I appreciate the mixtape feel of the record, I can't help but think that in certain points, this may make the whole album experience feel a bit discombobulated. Especially because not all songs of this record do it for me. Most notably, the lead single Lumberjack. I do not like this song. The daisy feel of the beat does not give me the same excitement of other songs in the record. But there's also many songs to praise in here. The dichotomy of Massa's smooth beat with the serious lyrics. Safari is the best closing track Tyler's made since his previous album. But that's still a compliment, okay? Wilshire is really good, ignore what the melon has to say about it. Lemonhead feels unnerving but in a good way. What's your name? Do I really have to say anything about this one? And Corso, which is easily my favorite song in here. The Dirty South plus bling era hip hop sound in this thing is unparalleled. One of the best bangers Tyler has ever done. So the result of the record to me is a really good album that also happens to be a bit unbalanced. Therefore, it gets the bronze medal in here.
I think I'm falling in love.
Igor, Tyler's breakup album. You know, I'd like to use this album as a symbol to Tyler's evolution as a person. He handles the subject with care and also respect. If he had done an album with the same motives back in like 2010, I'm pretty sure it would have been a completely different beast. Needless to say, this record is one of the most fulfilling albums Tyler has done. The story he tells is super compelling. Musically, it's enchanting. And it's by far my favorite record of his in terms of production. But strangely, I feel like I should like this album way more than I do. It's a great album, and I agree when people say there are no bad songs in here, and the new soul sound of this record is certainly very interesting, and I hope Tyler stays in this lane for a little longer. But to me, it's absent of a certain engagement factor that is really quintessential. It's present in some tracks, Are We Still Friends, New Magic Wand, and What's Good to name a few, but it's not 100% doing it for me. But you know, this was my first time listening to it. It may grow on me even more, plus it's number 2 in here. I already consider this to be a pretty kick-ass album. But when it comes to 2019 albums that can hook me even more, yeah, I can think of many.
You live in my dream state. We look at my fantasy.
Okay, I know so far I wasn't being totally positive about his albums, and I'm pretty sure there are some ravenous Tyler fans ready to burst through my door and dismember me. But what I'm about to say might salvage my soul. Flower Boy freaking rocks! If you thought I was going to heavily criticize this one as well, then
Suck my dick, white America!
this is the one Tyler album that truly got me and made me say, I get the hype. Chronologically, this was the first album where Tyler truly turned the page. It's a mature, sincere, and very charismatic album, showing more than ever his ability to blend in genres, and it would be my favorite produced record by him if not for Igor. The songs in here grab me a lot. Picking a favorite track in here is about as hard of a task as surviving his fans after the criticisms I made. Some of my favorites include Where This Flower Blooms, See You Again, Pothole, Garden Shed, and 911 Mr. Lonely. I'll probably decide my favorite during editing. But overall, yeah, this thing is insane. Easily the finest album in his discography for me. The only criticism I can think of is that it gets a tad weaker in the last few songs, but nothing that harshly harms the records. It remains strongly as a very robust release, and therefore, it's my favorite Tyler records. Here, as a bonus, we have my 10 favorite songs by him so far. Let's see how this list will change as time goes by. What a ride that was. Tyler may have only 7 albums, but what an insane discography progression that is. I'm so happy to be seeing that he's not only growing as a musician, but also as a person. That makes me super excited to see what he's going to do next. Maybe a pagan folk metal record. Yeah.